Every day I see this concept play out, and I wanted to talk this over with you. Our potential, our network, our life is literally capped by one thing, and that's exposure. Most people don't even realize it, but in the background, pulling the strings is this one invisible force that is determining literally how successful you are, how far you can go, and how big you can dream. So, in this episode, we want to find out what exactly is exposure. How is it affecting the trajectory of your life, and how can you use this simple concept today to make sure that you are and you keep winning? So, let's get right into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 5 to 9 Job Podcast. I am your host, Raymond, and this is a podcast where we explore the hours after work, the ones no one is paying attention to, and are actually the most powerful hours of the day because you have them to yourself, the hours where you can build the life that you want, build the kind of world that you want. So, today we are talking about something that I believe can change a lot of people's trajectory, and that's simply exposure. Have you ever noticed how your perspectives shift when you are, let me say, exposed to something new? Maybe it's meeting someone who is living a life you want, reading a book that maybe changes how you think, or even seeing how a small change can spark something big in someone else's life, Just being able to see more than you have already been seeing. That's simply what exposure is. You see, exposure has the power to completely transform how you view yourself, you view your goals, and your potential. And here is the sweet part about all this that I'm actually excited to share. Once you are exposed to a higher level of thinking, of being, or a higher possibility, you can't go back. I would actually argue that you shouldn't go back. Don't let yourself. Just make sure that you stay on this enlightened path that you get when you are exposed to something new, when your horizons are broadened, when the vision becomes more clear. So, let's start with a short story. I have had these phases in my journey where I was working hard, but I felt stuck. My circle was limited, and my exposure to new ideas or people outside of my comfort zone was sincerely close to zero. So I first remember feeling like this back in primary around P5. It's going to be a long story, but it's more so a catalog of my life anyway. So P5 around that time, and then what changed was I got promoted, but I also moved up the ladder in terms of streams. So the school system we had was that okay, I joined this new school in P5 first term. So we have 3 terms: first term, second term, third term. And then the first time I was struggling to catch up, moving from the village to a more senior school. Obviously, these guys are ahead of you regardless of the fact that the other side they had promoted you to P5. So I kind of struggled for not form one, but the first term, and then second time I kind of had my way. And then in third term, they promoted me to, so we had, within P5, there was north, south, west, and east, So I was in the last class, which was east. And then when I finally got promoted to west, there is a way that my whole perspective on what I could do in the school changed. My belief in myself changed. The way I saw myself also changed, something like that. And then it happened again when I was in college, so around Form 3. At that time, it was tennis and spirituality. And then in Form 6, when I realized I wasn't capped by who I had been throughout my O level, because I was in the same school for A level and O level. So when I went back in A level, I had this sort of, I should say, weight on me because, okay, to be truthful, I had been a very lousy guy in O level. I am going to talk about this actually in an upcoming episode about why you should care what people think about you. But essentially, I was living my life on this kind of trajectory of I don't really care what people think. And I wouldn't say I was very lousy, but I was lousy, too lousy to actually have accepted myself to fall that low. So when I came back in A level, I had that weight on me because, you know, when you are in A level, you're expected to walk a certain way, act a certain way. And I felt like I was always going to be the one people were going to point to be like, in that class of A levels, this is the fake guy. Anyway, when I reached A level, a few things changed, and the one monumental thing that happened was that I got my first girlfriend. Yeah, so at the age of 17 is when you're getting your first girlfriend. So when I started going out for, okay, like I needed to interact with this girl, so I started going out for functions, meetings, and then talking to other girls because obviously she would introduce you to her friends, and then you needed to have something to say. So even when you would go out on these other functions, you'd have to talk to some chicks. And actually, what set this out into motion was Soch. So Soch was in Form 6 years, but all the way leading to Soch, there are these interactions at the boys' school and the girls' school. Okay, for context, I was in Namiriango. It's an all boys school, like all boys, like zero skirts in the compound apart from staff. So, social is an event that is more like prom for the others, but we call it social because we can anyway. So, for our year, we went with Gayaza. So, within Form 5, by Form 5 second term, there is already preparations because social is in Form 6 first term. So you start to interact with the girls' school. You start to there was this whole thing of booking dates, preparing for the day, and then also meeting in holidays. Like there were those cliques that formed just because guys were, anticipating the day and they wanted to get to know their dates better, so they can either buy good gifts or they can, buy matching outfits or whatsoever the agenda was. But there was that, increased kind of I should say communication with girls. And at first, it was this whole round thing of we were looking for a school to go with. So it wasn't just Gayaza, it was Nabingo, it was Navisonsa, which was, I think, a favorite for most people, but we didn't go with them. I don't know which school they went with. Okay, I need to get back on track with the episode. But what I was saying is that that year I got more mail than I had got from senior 1 to senior 5, and that was all through exposure. Then again, it again happened to me when I was in campus, when I took on leadership in one of our students associations, and I started to be out there, to be out and about in the industry. And then most recently, when I quit my comfortable 9 to 5, there are going to be these events, is what I'm trying to say, that are going to help you to either increase your exposure or to take you out of the box that you have put yourself in. So in P5, it was me being promoted to another class. In Senior 3, it was joining a community of tennis players, and then spirituality. In my Form 5, it was getting, a girlfriend. My campus, it was going into a role of leadership. All these were steps that kept on making me better just because these events helped to shape who I am, and I was shedding off that old self that I was actually ashamed to be. That's the truth. At the moment, I didn't feel good being that person. So I met individuals who were years ahead of me in terms of growth and success, individuals who pushed me to explore, and environments that took me out of that small little sad box. And now I run a company, I have a podcast, I have the wildest dreams that, I'm not even comfortable sharing here. But most importantly, I see myself as more than what I am or what my current environment defines me as, just because of the exposure, the YouTube videos that I watch, the environments I've gone into, the kind of discussions I have seen firsthand. There are circles that you enter into. If you have partied with the elites of Kampala, you will be thrust into this world where not a lot is impossible for them. And that's the kind of mindset that they have, and it's what has gotten them there. That's exposure. What these events do for you in that case is that they push you not just to think about surviving, but also thriving. The exposure to other people's habits, other people's mindsets, the whole vision that you have shifts, how you approached everything simply because it changes your pace. You start to see different things and different ways of, you know, moving around and working your way up the ladder. And then you start to adapt and refine your own process. So, how do you increase your exposure in a way that serves your growth? That's what I am most excited to share. And very sorry for the long story, but yeah, let's get into it. So, first is to seek out new circles. Spend time with people who challenge you to think bigger. That doesn't mean abandoning your current relationships and your friendships, but it means adding to your circle with those who inspire you. And maybe down the road you'll fade out these people that don't. But the first step is to seek, like seek what you do not know. Seek those new circles out and then place yourself there. Second is to feed your mind. So what you read, what you watch, what you listen to really matters. There are things that I am now able to talk about simply because I have listened to some other guys say it on a podcast, and I will say it, and guys will be like, this guy must have a high IQ or something like that. But it's simply because I have put myself in the position to feed my mind. I keep listening to these things. I have other people's ways of thinking. I have viewed their perspectives, and then I kind of build my own around that. It's like a diet for your brain, in other words. Books, podcasts, documentaries, choose whatever content stretches you and what you like. But that shows you what is possible, not just for you to enjoy and just be in that whole enjoyment. So make sure it shows you what is possible for humanity, for your family, for your business, for any aspect of your life. Potential is an infinite and renewable resource, and you only get it by searching for it anyway. And then thirdly is to take bold steps. Exposure is not going to come from staying in your comfort zone like I was. I had to be very bold in asking that young lady to date me. I had to be very bold to come onto the tennis court. You guys, the tennis court during my time was a meritocracy, should I say? Like, it was only you're either a friend to the captain and you can play, or you have already shown skill and you can play. You couldn't come out of nowhere. You are in Form 3. Where have you been since Form 1 and Form 2, and then now you want to impose on our sport? No, there was that sort of barrier to entry in the sport that I had to stand up for myself, to be bold and say, you know what, I deserve to be on court. And I mean, after 2 years, I was captain. Even in my Form 5, I was captain. Form 6, I took my team to nationals for the first time in I don't know how many years. So, I mean, that all came simply because I took bold steps. So yes, say yes to that networking event, join that community, or take that course that you have been thinking about. It's all going to help you. And then 4, and tying this all back to your 5 to 9 hours. If you are like most of us, or most of them, you probably spend a chunk of your time scrolling through social media, watching the news, or consuming content that leaves you feeling drained and anxious. Things that don't really expose you, but they are more for entertainment and consumption. That is also exposure, is what I want to say, because you're exposing yourself to the negative things. So I just wanted to kind of bring out this argument that sometimes it's not about exposing yourself to the good things alone, but sometimes you can also have this kind of negative exposure that you should actually avoid. Now, like keeping yourself in this small box, that is also simply your exposure, just because you have never seen anything beyond that. So just be mindful of that negative exposure, the downward spiral, the steps back. They also serve your growth, but in a negative way. They literally deter it. So how do you take control of what you are exposed to in the after hours to kind of combat this negative exposure? I came up with 3 that I think can help you, and let's just go through all of them quickly. One is to curate your feed. So follow people and pages that inspire you, that educate you, or make you better. Unfollow anything that really doesn't serve your growth, like we have said. And then 2, set a learning goal. Replace that 30 minutes or more. It's usually more of scrolling with reading. Force yourself. I mean, at the beginning, I had to force myself to read more instead of doing the TikTok, instead of doing the IG, instead of doing the WhatsApp. Force yourself, set a goal, and then just adhere to those goals. And then 3 is to create more than you consume. One of the ways that I have started to increase my exposure is by putting out more content than I consume. Right now, I am recording an episode for the podcast. Later onwards, I'm going to be recording content for my own personal brand. And then after that, I'll be recording content for the company that I am trying to run, the real estate company. So at the end of the day, I am actually creating more than I am putting out, because I have this whole feedback loop of I have learned, I have created, I have reviewed, I have put out, and then I again get feedback through the comments and everything. And it just starts this learning process, and it just literally expounds your exposure. Just trust me on this. You can use me as your experiment. It's working. Oh, I think you guys can see that it's working. Anyway, you can't see the numbers, but it's working. And all this is to say that the exposure you allow into your 5 to 9 hours are just as important as the ones you are seeking during the day, the ones that we are used to. When we talk about exposure, people won't think of exposure during the nighttime, like the ones that you have on your phone. People will think of exposure during the office hours, who is introducing you to who, and things like that, the exposure you have on LinkedIn and everything. But we also need to be intentional about the kind of exposure that happens out of the traditional 9 to 5 hours. You're going to be in a better position to set yourself up for a better life, to play at different level if you are intentional all through the day, not just it ending at 5 p.m. and then you reward yourself with endless scrolling. No, it has to be intentional all the way. If you want to be at the top, you need to act like it, you need to be it. So, I mean, it's not going to be like you switch it on and off. It has to be full time, you are in the zone. So, here is your main takeaway for this episode, and something I want you to reflect deeply, deeply on. What are you exposing yourself to, and how can you be more intentional about what you let in? What are you exposing yourself to, and how can you be more intentional about what you let in? And that's a wrap for this episode. So thank you for tuning into the 5 to 9 Job podcast. If this episode sparked something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and join me next Monday, Wednesday, Friday for another episode of the 5 to 9 Job podcast. Until next time, keep exposing yourself to greatness. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.